Hello and welcome to Mountain Climbers. I'm your host, Whitney, and fellow mountain climber. I cannot tell you how good it is to be back with you all. It's been a rough couple of months with one illness after another, but I'm just so thankful that God is faithful, and I'm so grateful that He's given me the strength and the health to be back with you guys and bring you more inspiring stories. And that is so true of my guest today. She has an inspiring story. I am honored to have Miss Renee Miller on Mountain Climbers today, and she is the owner of Renee's Bridal in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. Now, when you see her, you may think, she looks familiar. I've seen her somewhere. And you're right, you have seen her somewhere. Miss Renee has designed bridal gowns for several of the Duggar and Bates daughters. They are best known from TLC's Counting On and Up's Bringingupbates. But more importantly, Miss Renee designed my sister Lindsay's bridal gown, and my sister looked absolutely stunning in that gown, and it just made her feel that much more special on her wedding day. And that's how I met Miss Renee. And when I met her, I just knew that she had a story to tell, and oh my goodness, she does in spades. And I think the biggest thing that you're going to take away from her testimony is to be bold for Christ. And that has been her motto. She's been bold for Christ, and she's taken leaps of faith. And when she's taken leaps of faith, she's believed and trusted that God would do the impossible. And just like she has created probably thousands of masterpieces for so many brides, God created a beautiful masterpiece in her life. And I know you're going to see that today. So let's hop over to Zoom and meet up with her. And I just can't wait for you to hear her story. Hey, Miss Renee, thank you so much for being on Mountain Climbers.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I have looked forward to this day ever since you mentioned this wonderful opportunity to me. So thank you so very much.
Well, the honor is all mine. And I cannot wait for my viewers to hear your story, because your life shows the beautiful masterpieces that God can give us. And you know a little bit about masterpieces. You
Yes.
own and design gowns. You have your own business, Miss Renne,
Yes.
in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. And so that's just a testament to what God can do. And so since you create beautiful masterpieces for hundreds of brides, probably thousands, I think it's only fitting to start this interview with you sharing your love story.
Oh my, oh.
Yes, we got to hear it.
Well, my problem is condensing everything. So if I get long-winded, just go. Because I love stories, and I especially love stories, and I love my love story. But yes, my husband and I have a unique love story where we met and didn't intend to meet. And isn't that just like God?
Definitely.
God puts you in places where you will be like, not me, not going down that path. No. And I was a single mom when I met my husband, and I have two amazing boys, and that make my heart very proud. And I had always said I would just never marry again, and it just had to be a God thing, and it definitely was. But I was on a business trip in St. Pete, Florida, and I had some girlfriends that went to the beach, and I was a good girl because I was there on business, so I wasn't going to go to the beach. I was going to my conference. So I dropped them off in the morning at the beach, and they were like, Miss Renee, if you wanted a man, what would you want? And I'm like, I don't want one. And they kept on and kept on and kept on. And I'm like, I don't want one. I don't want one. And they're like, no, you need a man. And I'm like, no, I don't. But they kept on. So out of joking and lightheartedness, I said, there's three things that I want in a man. Number one, I want him to be tall and handsome. I like a dark-headed man. That would be nice. And the second thing is, and you have to understand where I was in life. I had raised 2 children, worked very hard in life, and the thought process of raising more children so was not my heart's desire. And so I said I didn't want him to have any children to be raised. So I didn't want him to have any children. And the third thing is that he was independently wealthy and didn't need any of my to sustain himself. In other words, he stood by his own. And so these girls were on the beach, and about 3 hours later, I get this picture of this guy that they took a picture of, and they're like, Miss Renee, we found him. And I still have the picture. And
they didn't know him. It was just some random dude on the beach
that they had been talking to for 2 hours, interviewing, and it just was like they plopped down close to him. He was by himself. They noticed he didn't have a ring, and they just started talking to him. And then in the midst of that conversation said, hey, we have a friend.
You have great friends.
I do. And they shoot me this picture and they said, we have found him.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what in the world are you doing? I was just joking. I don't want anyone. And of course, he wasn't looking for anyone. Make a very long story short, we ended up meeting, and I had said I didn't want anyone who would let them pick them up on the beach anyway. You know, I had very high standards of who's going to let you pick you up off the beach? You know, this, do you not watch Dateline? Do you not watch those murder mysteries? I could never, you know. So we ended up meeting the next night. They had arranged for him to meet at a restaurant that we would appear at, and I wasn't aware he was going to be there. And when we pulled up, they had outside seating on the beach. It's beautiful. And I saw him, and I said, girls, what have you done? What have you done? I don't do this sort of thing. No, no, no. But that night, he won my heart by a couple of things that he had said about relationships and the type of relationship that he wanted and where he wanted. And he said, can I take you out the next night? As we ended that night saying goodbye and everything with my friends, he said, can I take you out by yourself tomorrow night? And I'm like, no, 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 no. And he said, well, what if we meet at a restaurant and leave from that restaurant? Would you do that? And I'm like, where? What kind of restaurant? I'm a mama, you know, I'm a mama. No, you know. But anyway, he won my heart over that dinner. And I tell everyone, after that day, we started talking on the phone. We did long distance. For a year, we literally got to know each other by phone conversation in depth. And we just took our time, and slowly but surely, we started to date. I moved here, opened my store to see if it would go, closed my store in Florida. We got married. And so we just celebrated, even though we'd been together for 7 years, we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary on December the 29th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing. That is so sweet and romantic. And I find it hilarious because that's just how God works. We say, like, you know, it will never happen this way. And he's like, hold on. You know.
That's right. That's right.
Don't make plans because God will laugh. It's true. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so it's so obvious why you're passionate about what you do. And speaking of what you do, when did you become interested in the bridal industry and designing gowns?
Wow. There's 2 phases that I would say that I became interested in it. But God. But God. I can honestly say that even though some of my high school friends were like, Renee, this is just so you. I never set out to have a bridal store. I never, as a young child, said, this is my goal in life. When I was a little girl, I
Mhm.
had this, I love the color pink. Now my color is purple.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
That's right. All girl, I'm all girl. If it glitters or is
Yeah.
beautiful, I love. But when I was younger, I tell everyone that on Saturday morning, I had this beautiful pink bedroom with this beautiful pink shag carpet.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure today people would call it beautiful, but in my mind, it is still beautiful. And I had a Ken doll and a Barbie doll. And my Barbie married Ken every Saturday morning
Wow.
without fail in my beautiful pink bedroom with a wedding gown designed by me with my daddy's handkerchiefs.
That's great. It's like the first scene of the wedding planner.
Yes, 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 yes. And I would use my father's handkerchiefs and cut them up, and I would embroider on them and big old flowers, and that would be her veil. And my mother would say, George, who was my father, are you ever going to stop her from that? And my dad said, no, she can use anything of mine she wants.
Got him
And
right.
yeah, oh, as a daddy's girl, big time. And so I think that I have always love, beauty,
Mhm.
and marriage
Yeah.
and a relationship. Always have loved that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't spring forward in life,
Mhm.
way down the road.
Yeah.
I had already had a career as a kindergarten teacher, and
Why?
so, and already in my children's life, my oldest was probably about 7.
Okay.
um I started selling on the side jewelry out of the trunk of my car.
Mhm.
And I remember one day calling my mama and saying, I know what I'm going to do to provide for my children. And my mama would be like, what's that? And I said, I'm going to have a bridal store. And she said, Renee, why? And I said, well, this bride just asked for 7 of these necklaces, Mama. Can you imagine all the sales lined up in one person? I just need one person. I get a veil, I get a dress, I get bridesmaids, and I just that night. And my mom's like, Renee, I just loaned you $75 to feed my grandkids. What are you talking about? And I said, I don't know, but Mama, I'm going to do it. And 22 years later, here I sat with many winding roads from learning how to design, learning how to sew. Oh my goodness. I got kicked out of sewing class when I was 14. They're like,
Funny.
Teresa, you can come back. That's my sister who's
Oh,
perfect.
like
Renee, not so much. Send her back home.
that's hilarious. I love that. And so when you started, the journey of, opening up your bridal boutique and all that, I know you faced a crossroads. You had to make some difficult decisions, and that involved learning the ins and outs of your business and learning, as you said, how to sew. So, can you talk about that journey?
Yes. I am so about if you let God lead you down a road and if you won't fight him,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be amazing what he can do with you and for you and through you. And I can look back now because it's been 22 years and say, oh, that was God.
I love it.
In that moment, oh my gosh, who hates me? Who has it out for me? Why is it poor me? It wasn't easy. And I don't know that I always would have claimed his hand.
Mm-hmm.
But because of a strong mama and a strong daddy who gave me a sense of a good foundation and God is in control,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. And I saw them go through some of those impossible times with God and come out amazing.
Yeah.
I knew that it was okay But one of the points was that was just a turning of God. Whoo, was times were changing, and I had what I call a regular bridal salon, which most of your listeners will go back to in their head when they're thinking a bridal salon or a bridal boutique, where I would go to market, I would buy all of the name brand dresses, and I didn't design at that time. I didn't create my own. But God said, I got a plan for you if you won't fight me. So I, being young in business and everything, I had debt was, I mean, it wasn't always wonderful. And we had some outstanding bills that we need to pay. And I remember a lady walked in my store one Friday afternoon, and I'll tell you this real quick, but every time I open my door to this very day, I stick my key in. I'm the only one who holds the key to my store outside of my husband. And it's important that I open the door every day, because on day number 1, I put my key into that door, I unlocked it, and I paused, and I said, Dear God, this is yours. May I never get in the way. And if on the day that you choose to close it, help me to understand that that's what you were doing. Through events and things, I thought God was closing my store. I thought God was moving me to do something else, and that this was not what he had for me any longer. And so I said, by Friday at 5:00, if I don't have X amount of money, God, this is your hand closing my door. I opened my door that Friday morning, and I said, okay, Lord, I've been praying for 2 weeks and you've not delivered. So you must be closing me. Give me the grace to accept it. I unlocked that door. I walked in, and I thought to myself, I won't be here in 2 weeks. This lady drives up in the parking lot, and at that time I could see who drove up and who didn't. And she said, Renee, I have been in here and I have fallen in love with 2 dresses. And if you can take the top and you can take the bottom and you can merge them, I'll pay you anything. I said, okay, let's get those 2 dresses. So I went and I got those 2 dresses, got her in it. And at that time I had 3 amazing seamstresses, a Greek, a Filipino lady, and a German lady. Amazing seamstress. Remember, I got kicked out of sewing class at this time. I didn't.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I remember you saying
Remember that. And so when this lady said to me, I want these 2 dresses, no matter what, I want them. So I go take them to the seamstress room, and I'm like, look, Inga, look, Nina, you can merge these, right? And they're like, no, we can't. And I'm like, yes, you can. I'd go back out, try to talk the lady into something else, because they were telling me no, they couldn't do it. She's like, Renee, I must have the top of this dress and the bottom of that one. Again, God is working, even though I'd go to the sewing room and they would say, no. Long story short, I ended up not listening to my seamstress and saying, sure, we can do that. That cost will be X amount. She whipped out her, and it was what I owed. I'm just going to be honest with you. She whipped out her checkbook and wrote me a check. And I'm like, you're kidding me. That's a big amount. I didn't think she would do it.
Like, what do I do with this?
Yes. And I'm like, okay, God. Okay. All right. I guess I will be here in 2 weeks. And so,
amazing. I love that. Love that story. And I know I'm sure that it was difficult. A lot of unknowns, a lot of losses, and a lot of doubts.
Yeah. Because of that story, my 3 seamstresses walked out on me on that day. They picked up, I went back into the sewing room and said, put my little hands on my hip and pointed my little finger. And I said, you will do this because I know it can be done. And they said, no, we won't. I said, you'll do it or you won't have a job. All three of them
Oh,
walked out. Hence the beginning of me learning how to sew.
yes. And you found out that God had given you an amazing gift. I mean, my sister came to your shop to find her wedding dress.
Yes.
Yeah, it was beautiful. She looked stunning in it. But I was so amazed when we asked, are you going to take measurements? And like, no, I got it. And you didn't even have to take measurements to know her size, which is mind-blowing to me. And so I can't imagine the joy that you felt when you realized, okay, I'm going to be okay. God's got this business in his hand. So I would just love for you to share about that joy and how you saw God give you beauty from ashes.
Well, the ashes stuck around a long time. I think we live in such an instantaneous society that sometimes people are like, I want what you have. I want what you have. I want what you have. Even I am guilty of that.
Yeah.
But the ashes didn't turn into beauty. It took a while. I mean, it took a long while. I remember taking apart that dress and thinking, God has a purpose for this, but I don't know how to thread a needle. I don't know. And I learned. I shut my door for 2 weeks to work on that dress. Then I looked at my associate and I said, there's something to this one of a kind gown.
Yeah.
So we started taking apart 300 wedding gowns and putting them back together the way we wanted them. And that's how I learned how to design and to create. And I remember taking broken jewelry that I had for years. Like, wow, that'd be pretty right there. Let's sew that on, you know? And now we are a little much more sophisticated. But God decided that if I was willing to walk through those ashes with him, he would see me through. And I remember the day, and with each customer I would get after that, my confidence, and I would pray, dear Lord, I just told this lady I could do this. Will you help me? And me and the Lord we are tight. We are tight because I go out on limbs because I trust him. Sure, I can do that. You talked about how I didn't need to take measurements for your sister, and she came back and her gown was perfectly fit.
She looked amazing in it.
Well, God so blessed me. He is so kind to give me that eye that I don't need to take measurements and everybody's like, you don't need my measurements? Are you sure? I'm like, no. I know. A scary side note was when I did Ginger Duggar's wedding gown.
Yes.
I also designed and created her 10 bridesmaids dresses.
Ooh, whoa.
And at this time, you have to understand that I really didn't know the Duggars to the level that I do today. Had never seen Jessa. I had never seen Jill. I had never seen any of the girls. But I had to make these dresses from looking at them through social media. I will say that I did ask for some measurements. They did give them to me, but I knew they weren't, how say this? I knew they hinder me sometimes. So we arrived the week of the wedding with those dresses for the first time to put them on, and they all zipped perfectly, all to God's glory. I just remember Ginger saying, God is so kind. I'm like, you're telling me. You're telling me God is amazing. But it is just something that I've just really learned to do through his grace that and I think going backwards by taking all those gowns apart, I think it just instilled something in me because I learned the backwards to the front, however. But God has been so good to walk through the ashes. And now now it's sometimes easy. I'm like, okay, Lord, I need something to challenge me.
I love it. Well, I love how you just believe in the gift that God has given you. And I feel like that's why you are where you're at today. But once you started that journey of believing, in the gift that God had given you, what doors did you see God open? How did He orchestrate all those details?
Mm. I think by just being willing. I think God has so many great things for us in life, but sometimes we're not willing to walk through that door. And if we're not willing to accept those gifts and multiply those gifts,
Mhm.
then we're cheating ourselves. I think to myself, what a wonderful, blessing God has been and has done through my business. But Renee, what are you missing out on that you didn't walk through, or you doubted, or what am I missing out because I didn't believe, or because I had fear? But God's been so good to help me have a faith to walk through those doors and a confidence that He's on that other end, ready to carry me through. But some of the biggest blessings, I'll tell you, I pray this prayer. I pray a lot. Um, I I talk to God a lot.
Yeah.
I start off at the door, and then I have a place in my store where I kneel daily. And when I first started years ago, I would pray this prayer. And I pray this for my children. If you're a mom out there, pray it for your children too. But I pray that God will do greater things than I could ever ask for. I pray for my children that God will bless them bigger than what I could ever ask for. And I ask that also of my business. Lord, this is what I would pray for in my human, selfish way. But Lord, I know you can bless me bigger and better than whatever I'm asking for. So cancel out what I'm asking for. And God, you just do it. You just do it. So you have to kind of have a blanket prayer. I have a blanket SOS to the Lord.
Yeah.
Often.
I love that. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that prayer, because one of the biggest doors I feel like that God's opening, you already mentioned the Duggars, that you designed Jill Duggar's dress, wedding dress, not to mention countless other, Duggar daughters and the Bates daughters. And for my viewers who don't know, they're best known from TLC's Counting On and Up's
Bringing Up Bates.
Bringing Up Bates. And so that's just, to me, mind-blowing. And so I would love to know, how did that come about? And what's it like designing dresses for women who have such an incredible and inspiring platform and outreach?
Wow. Wow. Humbling is what it's like. How it came about was with the Duggars. Even though I had watched them, I was not what you would call. I mean, I knew who they were, and I knew enough about them to know that because I designed dresses, that we could make a great team. I could design a dress that was modest and their standards without just a piece of material being put in there. I believe in women being able to be their level of modesty, and I believe I said this to your sister. My definition of modesty, your definition of modesty is personal and is different. So I always ask, where do you want it to be? So I knew what their standard was, and I knew I could do it. So when Jill got married at that time, and even then, social media is not what it was then, and they had no social media platform. So I ended up typing up a letter, and I was going to send it, but I chickened out. Going back to those things that God might have had for us, but we didn't walk through those doors. Jill is the one. Jill is a door that I didn't walk through. Then when Jessa got engaged, I repeated exactly what I did when Jill got married. And I sat there and wrote out this letter that I admired them. I admired their family values. As a Christian, carry that banner and felt like I could design their heart's desire
Yeah.
in a wedding gown. And toward a door number 2, I didn't walk through that God might have had. I mean, I'm not saying they would have listened to me, but I just didn't feel like there was anybody to validate me that says, "Oh, she's not crazy. She can do what she's saying. She can do it." So, when Ginger got engaged, I had an associate who worked for me came through the door that day. Miss Renee, did you see where Ginger Duggar? Because she knew it was a desire of mine to design a dress for them. And I said, no. And we looked and she said, there has got to be somebody that we know that know them in the rounds that there's got to be, you know, in the Christian world, you got to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that can validate for you.
Yeah.
I had become friends on Facebook with a lady who owns a bridal store in Virginia. And prior to this day, I had kind of noticed that the Duggars were on her Facebook page, but really didn't think anything about it other than stored that information away.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I think that my new friend knows them. And she's like, who? I said, I think Wendy knows them. Wow. And so I picked up the phone and I called Wendy and I said, hey, Wendy, you know the Duggars? Now, I wasn't going to miss out on door number 3 that God had for me. God came a knocking and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through that door.
Love it.
And so I just asked her if she knew him and she said yes. And I said, would you mind if you picked up the phone and you validated who I was and that I could do what I said I could do? And she said, that's awful bold of you, Renee. And I remember feeling empty inside.
That would bring you down.
Where I come from, women are not supposed to. I mean, sometimes we as women feel like we shouldn't be bold. Do you know what I mean? And so I was just like, even though she might not have meant it this way, I felt like, no, you go back in your corner. Again, I don't think she meant it that way, but that's how my inside took it. Yeah. And she said, do you know that I did Jill's wedding dress? I said, no, I didn't. No, I must not have snooped enough. I apologized to her and said, please, you pick up the phone and have them back in your store. And she said, no, I think this can work. What if you came as a designer and as a guest in my store, but I reached out to them and I had them come. So that was the beginning of me meeting the Duggars. Wendy, graciously reached out to them. I met the Duggars for the first time in her store. And then all of the other times that I did design and I did create for them, they either came to my store or I either flew out to Arkansas to be with them. So that was the beginning of the beginning. And again, God gave me a door.
That's so amazing.
I had to have some boldness to walk through. And even after I did that, several times I would cry because at the time I didn't realize, in all honesty, what I had gotten myself into.
Oh my. Yeah. Now, the Duggars are good friends with the Bates.
Yes.
Is that how that door opened for the Bates daughters to come?
It was.
Dresses from you?
It was. Actually, I was at Joy's wedding, and I get a wonderful invitation to come to the weddings. And I usually go out the week of to do final fittings and final filming. And we were sitting at the rehearsal dinner and Mr. and Mrs. Bates was there. And to be honest, at that time, I didn't really know who they were either. And Mrs. Bates came up to me and said, I have a girl, I have a daughter that might need your services. And then we found out now that I lived in Kentucky, we're just 2.5 hours away from each other.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
amazing.
I love
Good.
them. I love the Duggars and I love the Bates. When they come, it's just energy and love,
I,
all in the
I
store. Hmm.
great. And it's really cool because how we found out about you is because we watch the Duggars and the Bates show. And so we saw you on TV, and it's always been my sister and I's dream to get our dresses designed by you. And so, as I said, I was at the appointment with my sister, so I had the honor of meeting you. And I truly think the key to what you created is the prayer that you put into each bride's experience. To you, they are unique and special. And I just would love to hear how God gave you that vision.
You know, I don't know how he did that. I can truly credit, and I've brought it back a couple of times during this conversation, but my upbringing, I have a mom and a dad who really instilled in me that the greatest joy in life is to serve others.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a huge giver. My mother was a huge giver, even when they didn't have it to give.
Yeah.
And I think learning to serve
Mm-hmm.
is the key to anything. If you have any business out there, if you give of yourself and serve, then you'll be successful. Forget all these how-to, forget algorithms on Facebook, which we all fall into. All morning this morning, I had my earplugs in and listening, and finally I just threw them out. I'm like, I'm done. But learning to serve, and I had wonderful examples of someone teaching me to serve, and I think through that God works. But I love stories, and I love to connect with people, and so I think that just forgetting that it's a transition or transaction, and forgetting that it's a business, and seeing the person and
Mm-hmm.
seeing God brought this person to you, and you did say something, I pray from the time that I talk to a bride on the phone
Mm-hmm.
and we book an appointment, I pray for that bride and I pray for her appointment, and that I can have insight. So I guess I just bathe it in prayer, and God so graciously answers.
Yeah. So awesome. And it's what sets you apart from other, bridal boutiques. I mean, we could just feel that when we walked in to your shop, and I think it's amazing. And, you're a part of thousands of brides' wedding days because you've created this beautiful masterpiece for them that they just feel that much more special, in for their big day. And so I would love to hear the wisdom that you have to give, because I mean, not only have you experienced your love story, you designed your own bridal gown, didn't you?
I did.
I think is phenomenal. So I want you to share with your brides and brides to come who are beginning their love story how they can just enjoy those details and savor those moments of planning their wedding and make the most of the union and the journey that they're embarking with the man that God created for them.
Wow. Well, that's a sermon within itself. But I'll be very transparent. And you talked about the details.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the details, if I had to give any advice, is it's the details that rob you of the joy. It's like you, and the pressure and Pinterest, even though Pinterest is wonderful, I'm not saying anything negative about Pinterest, but I'm sure just going through this with your sister, the options are endless.
They are crazy.
Overwhelming, true. I mean, like, overwhelming. And the budget. Oh, the budget. The cost. I got married 2 years ago, and it shocked me, and I'm in this business. I'm like, food is what?
Yeah,
That
definitely.
photographer is what? I'm in the wrong line.
My sister experienced that shock too, and her husband.
Yes. And so I think sometimes to keep focused on what the day is really about, even though I love beautiful things and I'm in this business, guess what? It's not about that dress. It's not about the flowers that you chose. It's about at the end of the day that you have joined this union before God and your friends, and you will be ever connected with your forever love. That's the best advice. Keep it focused on that.
I love that. I'm going to take that to heart when my time comes, definitely.
Yes, and come and see me.
Yeah, I will. Hey, I've already planned that. When it comes, it will be a dream come true to come and see you.
Well, God is good, and God gives us the desires of our heart.
He does. He does. I am believing and trusting. But Miss Renee, I am in so awe of your story. It is so amazing. And you faced a lot of loss and unknowns, but look what God has given you. It's phenomenal. And so I would love for you to encourage others who are experiencing loss and the unknowns. How can they make it to the top of their mountain to find the purpose God has for them?
Get up. Get up. Get up and be active and trust. It's not easy to trust. It's not easy to trust that where you're at when it's uncomfortable, when there's no money in the banking account and the lights are turned off.
Yeah.
And there's no money for gas. It's not easy. But I think in those moments are when it is defined who you're going to follow and how you're going to get through there. Are you going to make it? And bask in those little, I used to call them nuggets of gold from God. And this was when, somebody brought me a Dr. Pepper. Oh, how nice. Oh, this is a nugget from God. Bask in the nuggets. Find this. Always be grateful, a grateful heart for the small things. It will set your mindset and never stop dreaming and believing in what God has for you. And just keep on keeping on and never giving up. Never give up. Never give up.
Well, you've shown what can happen when you never give up. And again, I love your story. And like you just said, if we could grasp onto that, then so many people would have mountaintop victories and find the purpose that God has for them. And I love that your story shows that when you hope, pray, trust, and believe, God can take those things and plant them as faith in your heart that will move mountains. And I truly believe and know that you're the epitome of this truth. When your strength comes from the right source, there's not a mountain you can't climb.